Welcome, everyone, to Rutgers, live at the Voice of College Football. It is 3 a.m. here, Eastern Time, but never too late to talk about Rutgers football, especially when they're playing the team where I graduated from, the University of Southern California. Tonight, we have USC with a 42-20 victory over the Scarlet Knights. So let's get right into it, and let's look at the takeaways from this game. And let's start by talking about Rutgers. Rutgers played hard. It was a physical game, and they battled. Now, that may be a good thing, and certainly we appreciate the Scarlet Knights' effort. As New Jersey native, although a USC alum, I want nothing more than Rutgers to be successful. But the fact of the matter is, and this is my second takeaway, Rutgers is just not as talented as USC. And that's why USC dominated in the trenches. And that's why I think Rutgers is going to have a problem going forward in the Big Ten at this point. They just don't have the talent. And more importantly, they don't have the depth at this point. Now, let's get into the fourth takeaway, which is one of the most important ones. Rutgers' defense isn't good. Now, they started out the season after 4 games. After only 4 games, were the 12th best running defense, rush defense in the country. Not anymore. And their secondary has collapsed, due in part to some injuries, but also by playing better competition. So, for example, against UCLA, a 1-5 team, Rutgers' defense allowed 251 yards after the catch. And at the start of the fourth quarter, had allowed 223 yards after the catch against the Trojans. My fifth takeaway from watching this game is Rutgers needs to recruit and develop better. They need to be buying some 5-star, 4-star athletes. They need to develop better, because what I saw tonight was that Rutgers was outmatched physically. They had the heart, but they didn't have the talent. Now, the sixth takeaway, which I think is something that's very important, and people may disagree with me on this. Coach Schiano, I'm addressing this to you. You are relying too much on Kyle Monangai, Rutgers' star running back, and he is one of the best running backs in the country. He's fast, he's quick, he's physical. It's tough to bring him down, as you saw on several critical plays tonight, including a 3rd and 5 in the second quarter. But you're risking injury from Monangai. You are relying too heavily on him, both in the rush and even in the pass game. And this guy took hit after hit after hit tonight and was down twice. This goes back to what I'm saying about lack of depth. Kyle Monangai is a Don Bosco prep graduate. I went to Bergen Catholic in New Jersey. Bosco was our rival. I know Kyle Monangai from high school. He was a star then. He's a star now. He will be a star in the NFL. But what you did to him tonight, Coach Schiano, was not fair. He was taking so many hits, and he was down twice. And you're risking his future, and you're risking his health. No win for Rutgers is worth hurting a player because he's the best player on the team, and you have to rely so heavily on him to have an offense. I'd rather see Rutgers lose than compromise the health of a player like that. And what I saw from Kyle Monangai tonight was not only troubling, but dangerous for him. Seventh take, Ethan Kaliamankis, Rutgers quarterback. He's good, but good's not good enough. Okay? Throws some great deep balls. Throws some he has a very strong arm, but he's inconsistent. Doesn't have a great pocket presence. If Rutgers wants to contend in the Big Ten, they need a better quarterback. Eighth take, Rutgers' offensive and defensive line is not good. They got completely dominated, and Kaliamankis was under duress all night. Again, it goes back to that issue, talent and depth, which can only be solved by recruitment and development. Now, regarding the offense, and this relates to what I was saying about Monangai, the offense is inconsistent because you're relying too heavily on one person. And Coach Shiano, let me be very clear with you. And we're looking forward to having you on this show because we respect you and look forward to your take on the future of Rutgers football. But you cannot rely so heavily upon a single back where you put his health at risk. And that leads also to inconsistency in the offense because you have no balance. Callie Kamankis is inconsistent. The O-line is inconsistent. All right? And except for Demir Miller, who had a career night tonight, you're really not spreading the ball out by in any significant way and showing balance on offense. Back to recruiting, back to development, back to depth. Now, the foundation for a good the foundation for a good future is there. I saw glimpses tonight where Rutgers looked good and did challenge USC at times, but it was not sustained, nor is it sustainable. So the foundation is there, but Rutgers is going to need to recruit hard, get into that transfer portal, buy some players, and buy some great coaches that are going to develop these players to be competitive in the Big Ten. Another thing affecting Rutgers, and I wouldn't say this is a take, but I would say this is more of an observation. I'm from New Jersey, and I went to the University of Southern California from 1993 to 1997. Every time that I flew to Los Angeles, I was tired for about a day or a day and a half because of the jet lag, okay? So you're asking this football team, all right, after a loss to UCLA the previous week, after losses to Nebraska, and after a terrible loss to Wisconsin, to fly across the country probably on a Thursday to play a game at 11 o'clock Pacific time on a Saturday. I think that that's going to be difficult for your players. And that did, in my opinion, have an impact. But I will say that Rutgers, nonetheless, the players should be commended for the effort that they gave. And you know what? Rutgers gave a great effort despite having a lot of injuries. And you have to give these kids credit because even though they lost 42-20, what I will say is this: it was still a good loss. They played with their hearts. They fought hard. They had some very good moments, and they showed potential. And it makes me optimistic for the future of Rutgers because the kind of players I want on my team are the ones who, they're going to fly across the country. They may be tired. They may be banged up, but they're going to bust their ass and do the best they can. They did that tonight. And actually, in the third quarter, we're almost within one score. So the ultimate takeaway is this: Rutgers should not be discouraged, nor should they necessarily be encouraged. They should learn lessons from this that are going to make them better. And I'm confident that with a coach like Greg Schiano, they're going to do that. Now, as far as USC goes, yes, USC won the game, but I'm not so sure that it's all positive for USC. Today, my first take is that we saw who USC was today. They're a good team, and we'll take this win. But they're not great yet. If watching that game, you saw that USC is not a complete team. Some great moments on offense, an offense that has a lot of firepower, an offense that could challenge any defense in the country. However, we have a defense here at USC that was giving up a lot of big plays to Rutgers. Lots of them. And let's put this into context. USC's defensive coordinator is D'Anton Lynn. Anybody who knows college football knows that D'Anton Lynn is an elite defensive coordinator. Look at what he did at UCLA last year. Okay? Hiring him at USC has really led to great returns for that defense, as it's a greatly, greatly improved defense. But we still see a lot of flaws. Now, that's in part due to some injuries, okay? We know what the injuries are. Two of the best players on USC's defense, or arguably so, are out. But some of the plays that USC gave up today, especially in the passing game, giving up over 300 yards, giving up 4.8 yards per carry to Kyle Monangai, there's room for improvement there. But what I will say for my initial take from USC is that this team will sooner rather than later be competing and be in the playoffs and compete for the national championship. My second take, like I said, defense is the key area to be improved. But let's put this into context. This is not D'Anton Lynn's fault. When Lincoln Riley came here, he came here from Oklahoma with a philosophy that offense was to be prioritized and defense was not. You see this from his tenure at OU, when he had dynamic offenses and Heisman Trophy winners, but his defenses were always weak. For example, giving up 63 points to LSU in the playoffs. Riley had a philosophy that was not going to be sustainable. So when he came to USC for the first couple of years, he brought that philosophy. Now we're in a rebuilding mode on defense. And to Lincoln Riley's credit, he has hired a great staff, and the defense is greatly improved this year. But it's going to take a little time. And that's why I say right now USC is good, but they're not great. But that greatness is going to come sooner rather than later. My next take is very simple. Woody Marks is a stud. Woody Marks is fast. He's quick. He's tough to bring down. He's an elite running back and one of the best in the country and has a future in the NFL. Number 4, Makai Lemon. What a game. Nearly uncoverable. He was outstanding for the Trojans, and they need to be throwing more to Makai Lemon. Miller Moss. Now, I'm going to be honest with you about Miller Moss at 3:12 a.m. in the morning. At the start of the season, I said Miller Moss is the next Drew Brees, and I still stand by that, although he may be the poor man's Drew Brees at this point. But Miller Moss has an incredibly high football IQ. He can be an incredibly accurate passer. But when I look back at the Louisville game from last year and the LSU game, where I thought he was fantastic, something has happened since then where Moss seems a bit more tentative, a bit more prone to turnovers, although not in this game, and a bit closer to an efficient quarterback than an elite quarterback. My suspicion is because he's been under constant duress because of a weaker offensive line. I can't say that for sure. But right now, Miller Moss is really good, but in my view, the ceiling for him is much, much higher. And for USC to be great, he needs to get there, and hopefully he will. The last take is related to, just my general comment that it's, I love Rutgers, but I did go to USC. And I'll always love the Trojans. It's going to take time. It's going to take time because we did not build a strong foundation in the first 2 years of Riley's tenure. Riley relied on transfers. He relied on Caleb Williams. He didn't prioritize defense. It's only now in the third year that he has started to fix the problem. So let's be a little bit patient. Months ago, I was critical of Lincoln Riley after a terrible season last year. But now that he has made the right moves, USC football has to be willing to accept that this is going to be a slight rebuild for a year or two, but that we will return to greatness. And I think we will. So at this point, I think firing Riley or making any drastic changes would not be advisable. And it really sucks to have to wait. But greatness will come soon because the elements of it are there. And as far as Rutgers goes, they're not there yet. And one concern about Rutgers, and I will say this, both teams have suffered from injuries, so you have to take that into account. But how long is Greg Schiano going to tolerate this? Schiano coached in the NFL. He coached at Ohio State. He was the coach of Rutgers from 2001 to 2012. And in his fifth year there, he turned the program around to make it relevant in college football. Now he's in his second stint. He's in his fifth year. They start out 4-0. Then they lose to Nebraska 14-7. Then they get dominated by Wisconsin. Then they lose to a 1-5 UCLA team. And now they lose 42-20 to a good USC team. So we go from 4-0 to 4-4. My concern is that at some point, Greg Schiano is going to have enough of this. And I hope that's not the case, Coach Schiano, because not only do we want you on this show as soon as you're available, we want you to be coaching at Rutgers until the end of your career, because you're the only coach that has proven to make Rutgers relevant. But to do that, I hope that Rutgers University and the administration gives Coach Schiano the resources he needs, because I don't think Coach Schiano is going to tolerate too many more years of mediocrity, which I think will be the case for the remainder of the year. And I see Rutgers ultimately ending up probably 6-6 or at best 7-5. But whether they recruit well and whether they continue to develop is questionable. And how long Coach Schiano will tolerate this is definitely something that I'm concerned about. Now, just briefly, let's look at the game today. 42-20 USC. Let's look at the team stats here. And if anybody's watching at 3:16 a.m. in the morning, and remember, it may seem crazy to be doing a live show at 3:16 a.m., but that shows you no time of the day is inappropriate to be talking about Rutgers football. So, team stats. Interesting. The game was 42-20 USC, but Rutgers outgained USC in yards. Rutgers was only 5 yards shy of the total yards that USC had. USC 439, Rutgers 434. Passing yards, Rutgers had more than USC, 313 to USC's 302. Rushing yards, close. Rutgers 121, USC 131. Yards per play, however, 4.9. Rutgers 8.8 for Southern Cal. First downs, 28. Rutgers 22, USC. Third down efficiency, check this out, 50% for Rutgers, 11 of 22, 5 of 8 for the Trojans. And what might be the most alarming statistic, total plays, Rutgers 89, USC 50. 39 more plays than USC. And time of possession, Rutgers 36 minutes, 28 seconds. USC 22 minutes, 13 seconds. Now, if you looked at that and had no knowledge of what the score would be, who do you think would win? What do you think the score would be? Not 42-20 USC. The problem goes back to what I said earlier. USC was simply superior in its talent and dominated through explosive plays repeatedly because of that talent, and was able to score at will, both running the ball and throwing it throughout the first half and through most of the middle third to fourth quarter, because they just had better players. And Coach Schiano, if there was one message I would give to you, is Rutgers needs better players. Now, as far as the players themselves go, speaking of the players, Ethan Kaliakmanis, who came into the game with a 53.3% completion percentage, 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, had a pretty good game, 24 of 47. Not a great completion percentage, but did throw for 313 yards and a touchdown with no interceptions. Rutgers star player, Kyle Monangai, really one of the best players in my view, one of the best running backs in the country. If you watched his run on 3rd and 5, when he was stopped by USC about 2 yards after he touched the ball and grinded out 3 more yards with several players on him, that showed you not only the tangible qualities of being strong, physical, but also the intangible qualities of having that grit and determination. Antoine Raymond, another Don Bosco product, 15 rushes, 36 yards for a 2.4 average. Monangai was 18 of rushes for 86 yards, 4.8. Receiving, Dymere Miller had a great day. Career day, 11 catches, 131 yards, 11.9 yards per catch. He gave the Trojans problems. KJ Duff, 3 receptions, 51 yards, 17 yards per catch average. So, like I said before, there were bright spots for Rutgers. And if you look at the team stats, like time of possessions, first downs, passing yards, They all beat USC. But the score shows you that sometimes statistics don't matter, because if you have superior talent, you will ultimately overcome the opposition regardless of anything else. And that is the problem with Rutgers right now. They don't have the dudes. They have a few. They need more. They're good, but good's not good enough. For USC, Miller Moss, 20 of 28, 308 yards, 2 touchdowns. Woody Marks, 6.3 yards per carry, 15 carries, 94 yards, 3 touchdowns. Makai Lemon, great night. Throw to Makai Lemon more. He's very, very good. 4 receptions, 134 yards, 33.5 yards per reception with a touchdown. And Woody Marks, he just doesn't run. He catches too. 5 receptions, 48 yards. And tight end, Kyle Ford, 1 touchdown on 4 receptions for 45 yards. So when you look at the statistics, the statistics sometimes lie. It looks close on paper, but it wasn't close in reality. And that goes back to the takeaways that I mentioned before. And those takeaways are critical if Rutgers wants to become relevant, because Rutgers is going to have a schedule year in, year out where they have to play teams like Michigan, play teams like Ohio State, play teams like USC. Okay? So while the effort's there, they need more talent, they need more depth, they need to focus on getting a badass defense. They need an elite quarterback. They need to stop relying on one player or 2 players to carry an offense or defense. And they need to focus on consistency, sustainability, and ultimately winning in the trenches and becoming a team that can out-physical others. I think Rutgers is a few years away from that. Whether Coach Schiano sticks with the team, I hope he does. But it's ultimately going to come down to recruitment, transfer portal, and development. Number 1, buy elite players. Number 2, go into the portal. Get those 5 stars or 4 stars, okay, that went to Alabama, that went to Ohio State, and are pissed off because they don't start. Say, you can come to Rutgers and you'll start, and we'll give you more money. I hate to say that we live in this world, but we do. So give them 2 things. Recruit. Look at every 5-star athlete that's going to Alabama, Ohio State, Texas, Georgia. Pay them more so they come to your school. So Rutgers, the administration, if you want to be relevant, you have to dedicate the resources. If they don't do that, go into the portal, get those kids who aren't starting, who are 4 and 5 stars coming to college, get them. And the third thing is, you better develop them. Because kids just don't want to come to college and make money. They want to go to the NFL. And Rutgers has to start building a reputation that not only can it get the best players, either through recruiting or the portal, but that those players will be successful in life. And Rutgers, you have to consider that you are doing this against a backdrop of being one of the worst teams in college football throughout your history, with a sub-500 record since the inception of your program. So Rutgers is not regarded traditionally, historically, as a contender. So how do you change that? You change it through money, coaching, development, and placement in the NFL. And to build that foundation, you're going to have to start getting the kind of players that will enable you to develop them into NFL prospects and make the team competitive with Ohio State, with Michigan, with USC. Because the trajectory that I worry that Rutgers is going on right now is that it's plateauing. And that it's going to be a perennially 6-6 team. Okay? So let's think about it. And I would address this to the administration at Rutgers. Why the hell would someone go to Rutgers if they can go to Alabama or they go to Georgia or USC? or, Georgia or Ole Miss, Clemson. I'm going to say for the last time, you got to offer more money than they do. You have to use the portal more effectively and offer more money than any other team. But you cannot stop there, because just getting great players doesn't guarantee team chemistry, doesn't guarantee wins. Let's look at Texas A&M. What does complement that, though, is developing them into top-notch NFL prospects. And at Rutgers, you get a great education. So you're going to develop players who will be successful in football and in life. I just don't see Rutgers anywhere near that at this point. And the question is, will Rutgers make that commitment or will they not? And my feeling is if they don't make that commitment, Schiano's going to leave. And if that happens in the next 3 or 4 years, Rutgers will go back to what it has been and what we hope it would never revert to. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Now, as far as USC goes, I went to USC from 1993 to 1997 in the John Robinson years. It was called a return to glory in 1993. I was a freshman when we went to Happy Valley in Penn State and lost after a failed 2-point conversion. But I will tell you, there was a lot of hope when John Robinson was there in his second stint. But we didn't perform up to expectations, except for a 1996 victory over Northwestern in the Rose Bowl. But USC has a different culture than Rutgers. At USC, football is important. Football is in the Trojans' DNA. Hey, Rutgers, is it in your DNA? Because it doesn't seem like it. You weren't even close to USC. You didn't even, quite frankly, you could argue you didn't even belong on the field with USC tonight. Because although you made some great plays, we get it. When they wanted to exert their will, they did. And that should be an embarrassment to Rutgers. Okay? So the question is, what is the culture at Rutgers? Because when I was at USC, the culture at USC was simple. We want to win a national championship, and we're going to do anything we can to get it. Okay? And sure enough, you saw after USC hired, well, historically USC, of course, had great coaches and won national titles, but look what happened with Pete Carroll. And even after Pete Carroll left, USC was always dedicated, with some exceptions, to winning a national championship and to recruiting 5-star athletes from Bosco, from Mater Dei. Rutgers, are you committed to that? Because what I saw tonight, quite frankly, and I'm from New Jersey, so I'm not afraid to be blunt, was embarrassing. Embarrassing. And for someone like Coach Schiano, who's coached at the most elite levels, not acceptable. You go to USC and perform like that, you will never see the field. And that's the difference between USC and Rutgers. At USC, football is as important as anything else. Football is part of USC's identity. Right now, it seems like Rutgers kind of wants to be a good program, but isn't doing the things it needs to do to be a good program. That's why you're losing at Nebraska. That's why you're losing by 32 points to Wisconsin. That's why you're losing to a 1-5 UCLA team. And that's why you're losing 42-20 against the USC team, despite getting more first downs, having greater third down efficiency, passing for more yards, and having 39 more plays than them. I'd like to see you, Coach Schiano, at the post-game press conference, instead of saying, we're making progress, we're going to clean things up. What I'd like to hear from you is what I heard from Tim Tebow after Florida lost to Ole Miss. It was a speech called The Promise. And he apologized. He apologized to the fans for the loss, and he said, but there will be lessons that come from this, I promise you. You will never see somebody work harder to win a national championship, something to that effect. And sure enough, what happened? Florida won a national title. Coach Schiano, I want to see you say, this isn't going to work at Rutgers. This is not who Rutgers is. This is completely unacceptable. I don't care if it's USC. I don't care if it's UCLA, okay? We are going to be a nationally relevant program, and we're not going to tolerate this nonsense anymore. And if the players don't buy into it, then they won't play at Rutgers. And then just maybe you might get 1 or 2, 4 or 5 stars to say, hey, maybe I want to be part of a program that's building towards a national championship. Maybe I want to be part of building something instead of going to an Alabama or an Ohio State where, every year they're competing for a title. Maybe I want to be part of a program that's striving for one where I'm going to have the support and I'm going to have this is the critical word, the culture to be part of something special. Right now, what I see from Rutgers is they're kind of committed, but they're not all in. And I saw a comment in the comment box from Jason O, who says, football is important at Rutgers. Don't get yourself all worked up about losses. Well, he's got a good point. And I think he's right that football really isn't that important at Rutgers. And, well, I do get worked up about that because I'm a big fan of Rutgers University, of what they do for students, their academics. But you hire a coach like Greg Schiano, his second stint, okay? Give him the damn resources to compete, all right? Give him the money. Give him the authority to hire who he wants, recruit who he wants, take anyone who he wants out of the portal, and to develop people by hiring elite coaches so that when someone asks why should I go to Rutgers, you have something to say about it. And if Rutgers, if you don't want to be that, well then just be that. Then just say it. Because what I saw on the field tonight with USC was a lot of heart, but a lot of disparity in talent. It wasn't even close, and that's just not acceptable. Now, I do want to congratulate the USC Trojans. I mean, after all, USC, although they weren't necessarily consistent tonight and had flaws, you got to give credit to USC's physicality tonight. Okay? They laid some serious hits on Rutgers, and they played with the kind of chip on their shoulder that I wish we had seen against Minnesota, that I wish we had seen, okay? I hate to say it, I thought it was there somewhat against Michigan, but Jesus, against Maryland, you're up 28-14. So the issue I have with USC is very different than the issue I have with Rutgers. With Rutgers, I see it as more of a kind of a structural problem, a problem of commitment, okay? With USC, I think the culture and the commitment is there, but the consistency isn't. Something is off at USC that leads it to inconsistency and a lack of sustainability. I mean, do you remember the years from, I would say, probably 2002 to 2007 or 8 with Pete Carroll? Every year, we were playing at the highest level. It reminds me of the Alabama teams from probably around 2012 to 2020. And that's what USC is lacking right now. And there's nothing more problematic than having the talent, but not having the consistency. Because there's no reason, all right, that we should be losing to Minnesota and Maryland, a team that lost to Northwestern. But then we turn around and, we beat LSU? An LSU team that just went on the road and beat Arkansas. An LSU team that beat South Carolina. And an LSU team that I think will beat Alabama. So it's really, really disheartening to see that kind of inconsistency. And I do credit Lincoln Riley for having the staff right now that can hopefully address that. But it's been a disappointing year for the Trojans. 4-4 is not acceptable. Now, ironically, guys, Rutgers is 4-4. USC is 4-4. So who's in a better position, Rutgers or USC? At this point, It's obvious. USC. Okay. Now, I am saying this on the assumption and giving the benefit of the doubt to USC's president, Carol Folt, that she truly does want a national championship football team. Because I believe it was in 2019 when she didn't want to hire Urban Meyer but wanted to keep Clay Helton. I may have the year wrong, but you get my point. I'm going to assume that the administration wants USC to be a national title contender, and by the coach, by evidence of the coaches they've hired, that suggests that that's the case. So USC is a disappointing 4-4. The problem with Rutgers is that their record is what we expected. I'd rather be a disappointing 4-4 than a 4-4 that everyone thinks is actually an accomplishment or less of a travesty than it has been historically. So USC is not only in a better position, but I'm going to go so far out to say that USC is going to contend for a national title in 2 to 3 years. I do believe that they are building something special. And what I saw tonight from USC was a hunger and a physicality that I haven't seen all year. I did see it in the third quarter of the Michigan game. I did see it against LSU. But what I saw tonight was a chip on their shoulder. And I think we need to give Lincoln Riley and his staff a chance. And I think USC's 4-4 record is it's an anomaly. What we're going to see is a consistent upward trajectory leading to the playoffs next year and a possible national championship in 2 years. What I see from Rutgers is 4-4 this year. Now, Rutgers has 4 games left. What do I see happening to Rutgers? At best, 2-2. So they go 6-6. Now, for Rutgers, that might be considered average or par for the course. Well, then why have a football program? Why? You are in a 12-team playoff system now. You can get in with 2 losses, maybe even with 3. You know you're in a system where money matters, development matters, and the transfer portal matters. What are you doing to address that? I will tell you what Rutgers is doing. Rutgers largely recruits from New Jersey. And I went to one of the top football schools in New Jersey. It's called Bergen Catholic High School. Tyler Booker from Alabama went there for a year. Steve Angeli, who's at Notre Dame right now went there. Mark DeRosa, who was a professional baseball player, went there. And I will tell you this about the top New Jersey high schools. They are good. They are very good, but they are not IMG. They simply are not. All right? They're not modern day. Their players are very good, but they're not on the level of those schools. Rutgers, you've got to expand your recruiting base, and the only way to do that is through money, and you've got to use money to get people out of the portal, and you have to develop players so that you can start saying, we've got lots of people going into the NFL. It may take time, but ironically, NIL has made it, and the whole new system we have has made it, and the portal has made it so much easier for teams that are historically bad to achieve parity. So what's Rutgers administration doing? I don't know. So Rutgers' 4-4 record to me represents more of the same and a lack of commitment. USC's record right now at 4-4, I suspect will ultimately USC will ultimately end up, I'm going to say 8-4 or 7-5. I am worried about the game against Notre Dame, but USC, the way they played tonight, can win out. And if they win out and they go 8-4, I'm going to say this is an improvement from last year and an upward trajectory. And right now, if I had to compare both schools, I see Rutgers going from 6-6 this year to 5-7 next year. I see USC, even if they go 7-5 this year, going to 9-3 or 10-2 next year. Probably 10-2. Okay? Maybe we'll lose to Notre Dame. All right. So maybe we'll lose to Washington. All right. So let's say worst case scenario. 6-6. Relax. Give it time. It's going to change. The commitment is there. And I saw, when you look at Lincoln Riley on the sidelines tonight, I saw he was a little bit pissed off tonight. He had that fire in him. He knows his job is on the line. And he also knows he's a damn good coach. But one thing I would say to Lincoln Riley is, you've got to listen to other people around you, and you've got to make adjustments. He has done that. And I give him credit for that. Okay? Lincoln Riley is in a totally new he's in an uncharted territory. You have to understand, he's a young guy. He came from, Lincoln Riley came from an OU program where he was winning all the time based on a philosophy that ultimately was not sustainable. This is the first time he's ever suffered the kind of challenges to his existential identity as a coach ever. And he's a young guy, so it's hard for him. I get that. But he's making the adjustments. It'll take time. Do I think we're going to go 6-6? Probably not. I think probably 7-5. The game at Washington worries me just simply because it's at Washington and because we lost at Maryland, because we lost at Michigan, because we lost at Minnesota. And because, Washington, although Washington lost to Rutgers 21-18 in Piscataway, they did beat Michigan. I just don't have that much confidence. I'm not saying I think we're going to lose. I just don't know. So if I had to predict, it would be 7-5. So fine, 7-5. Let's move on. All right. Let's keep getting recruits on the defense, especially the defensive line. And I think next year is going to be a 10-2 year and a playoff year. I do not think USC wins the national title. But I think 2 years from now, I think USC will be in a position to go deep into the playoffs. But Rutgers, this is your show, Rutgers. And Coach Schiano, we've wanted you to come on for weeks now, and we're waiting because we have questions. We have questions. You start off 4-0. You're 4-4. You were in Lincoln, Nebraska on the 2-yard line, 1st and 10, and with Kyle Monangai as your back, you couldn't score a touchdown. You faked a field goal. You missed a field goal. Wisconsin, you were lifeless. A Wisconsin team that got blown out by Alabama. A Wisconsin team that USC beat 38-21. I don't know what to say. Okay, and then you go to USC tonight, and although the score doesn't indicate that you were totally blown out, if you watch the game, that was the case. All right, and then UCLA comes in 1-5, and if you watch that UCLA game in Piscataway, all right, it was the same thing. UCLA was more physically dominant. So I don't know what to say about Rutgers, except I support Rutgers and want Rutgers to be relevant in the Big Ten. But after losing 4 straight and seeing how their players are playing, my question is to Rutgers, are you committed or not? And we'd like to know the answer to that question before we invest so much time and emotion into your program. Now, as far as USC goes, the last thing I'll say about USC, I don't see, if USC plays to their potential, they will win out. So these last 4 games are really a referendum in part on Riley's ability to keep these players playing at a high level. To keep these players playing the way they did against LSU rather than they played against Maryland. Will it happen? I'm somewhat optimistic that it will, such that at the very least, I think we go 3-1. But I think 4-0 is possible because if you look at Notre Dame, take one look against and I'm sorry to interrupt. I just saw Jason O's comment. They aren't committed. Jason, you obviously know Rutgers very well, and you might be right. And then my question is, well, what's Greg Schiano going to do knowing that? Why would he stay there? And if he doesn't stay there, who are they going to get? And And there was another comment that I'm not a fan of UCLA. UCLA plays hard. Yeah, UCLA does play hard, and you're right about that. And when UCLA played in Piscataway, they were more physically dominant than Rutgers, even in a very off year. And if that doesn't raise the red flags about Rutgers football, I don't know. But Jason, you might be absolutely right. So, I think for USC this year, I think if you look at Notre Dame's game against Northern Illinois, if you look at Notre Dame's games generally, they don't scare me. Notre Dame is not the Notre Dame of 1988, 1992, and certainly not of 1997 when I was at the Coliseum when we beat them in overtime as we knocked Ron Powless's fourth down pass. Sammy Knight knocked it down. Lou Holtz lost the last game he ever coached for Notre Dame. I think we could beat them. I think I'm a little bit worried about the Washington game, but I think it's possible we win out. And if we win out and go 8-4, it's a successful year and we move forward. Yeah, so there's another comment. Notre Dame has owned USC, bud. Listen, I am not arguing with you. I am not arguing with you at all. I went to USC from 1993 to 97. Was it Sid Irish? Yeah, I went there from 93 to 97. We lost all 4 years to Notre Dame, all 4. And when we were number 5 in the country in 95, we lost 38-10 in South Bend. So, yes, Notre Dame has dominated the series. And when I was there, we lost all 4 years to UCLA too. But otherwise, USC was fun. But I just don't know if Notre Dame is as good as – I just don't know. I'm not sure about them. Could they beat USC? Of course they could. But what I'm trying to say is in the remaining games, is USC capable of winning all of them? Yes. Will they? I think they'll probably go 3-1. So that's my take on that. I think that Schiano, was it QLJ? I think Schiano's a decent coach too. I really respect him as a person and as a coach. I think he's more of a defensive coach, but I think what scares me not about him, but what worries me about him is that he's going to throw up his hands at Rutgers and say, look, I'm not tolerating this anymore. I don't want to deal with mediocrity. So I don't know what's going on inside Rutgers University and what commitment he has from the players. Because, to take an exaggerated example, when Nick Saban was at Alabama just said, you get whatever you want, do whatever you want, and that's it. We want to win a national championship. But I think Schiano might be tired. I worry that he might be tired of trying to build a program again, because it takes a lot to build any program one time. I'm worried that he's going to get tired of going through that grind again. And if that's the case, is Rutgers going to get a top-notch coach? I hope it doesn't happen, but I worry that it will. And QLJ just said can't blame him. I totally agree. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Coach Schiano. And on a prior Rutgers show, I said, I don't blame Coach Schiano for any of this. I really don't. And to some degree, I did blame the players after Wisconsin because they were totally lifeless. But to some degree, I don't blame them either. Rutgers needs to have the kind of players and the kind of resources to compete in the Big Ten. And if they want to be at Purdue, then let them be an effing Purdue and just be honest about it. But what we're having here with Rutgers, it's kind of like, glimpses of greatness and then a mountain of mediocrity. And I'm tired of it. And that's the one thing about USC, why fans at USC can tolerate mediocrity when it hits USC. Because USC fans know it's not going to stay this way. And that people aren't happy about it. I can't say that for Rutgers. So I don't know. But Yeah, QLJ, that's exactly my point. Like, going through the grind to build another team is one thing, but building a team at a school that's not committed is another. And I don't understand why they're not committed, because it seems like they're almost halfway committed. Well, what's the purpose of doing that? I mean, I don't. If you want to be, if you don't want to value football, then don't value football. If you want to value it, I would think you would dedicate every resource possible, because think about the value to Rutgers University as an academic institution if its football program is beating Ohio State and beating Michigan. If that stuff matters, admissions goes up, standards go up, your endowment goes up. But I think that they're kind of ambivalent about it. And that's why, like I said before, I mean, USC's 4-4 is a temporary setback. I worry that Rutgers 4-4 is part of its DNA. Yeah, Jason, you make a really good comment that Rutgers has resources, they have nice facilities, and they have a nice recruiting base. They do. I think they recruit well at some of the top New Jersey high schools. And you said they pay Schiano over $6 million. Okay, so that shows me they're committed, but how committed are they? You said it just is what it is, and I'm not sure what you mean by that. I'm not sure if you're saying that they can't get the top players, or that they're not willing to expend the kind of money that they might that they would need to do so. I'm not sure, but you seem to be reflecting the concern that they don't have the commitment that would be necessary. Yeah, not being able to score from inside the 5-yard line isn't the school not being committed. I agree. But year after year after year of mediocrity suggests to me that the school is not committed. When I look at the Chris Ash era, for example, I mean, yeah, Jason, I might agree with that. That Schiano is not a great game day coach. I think that's a good comment. Trojan fight. You said, is Rutgers recruiting class in danger if they have more losses? They approximately 3 weeks ago, they had, I believe it was the 21st ranked recruiting class in the country, and at that time were ahead of Ole Miss and Florida. Most of their recruits were 3 stars. Several were 4 stars, and they had no 5 stars, which, all right, that's not horrible. They have, schools like Iowa, for example, they recruit a lot from, the 3-star pool, and they develop them. Okay. But historically, they've not had the best recruiting classes. And they do recruit from schools like Don Bosco, like Bergen Catholic, like DePaul Catholic, that have frequently been in the top 25 nationally. But my point earlier was, I don't think those schools are IMG. I don't think those schools are Mater Dei. I don't think those schools are Bishop Gorman. And I'd love to see them be recruiting, number one, from Florida, Texas, Georgia, California. And people might be like, well, that's crazy. Why the hell would somebody from Georgia go to Rutgers instead of UGA? Well, I don't know. If they're a 3-star from Georgia or even a 4-star and you offer them enough money, they just might. And even if they don't, you can go into the portal when they don't start at UGA or at Florida State. Well, forget Florida State. At Florida, well, forget that too. Or at Alabama. And but it doesn't seem like there's the ambition to do that. And Jason O says their best commit is a 4-star. There you go. 4-star defensive tackle from Georgia. And he says, I'd be shocked if he sticks. Overall, they should fit. I agree with that. I agree with that entire sentiment. And QLJ says they were beaten pretty bad by Mater Dei and IMG. I don't know what team you're talking about. If you're talking about a New Jersey football team, Are you talking about Bergen Catholic? Because if you're talking about Bergen Catholic played Mater Dei in California and lost by about 55 points. And they played IMG a few weeks ago and lost by 10. I believe it was 27-17. And they lost, I believe, in 2015 to IMG 59-45 or 59-49. So, yeah, QLJ, you're right about that. When Bergen Catholic went to Mater Dei, that was when JT Daniels was a senior, and they blew us out. It wasn't even close. And then IMG came to Oradell, New Jersey, and they were up about 30, I think 35-10 at the half. Bergen made kind of a late comeback, but the result was never in doubt. And then IMG a few weeks ago, it was pretty close for a half, but you could still tell that IMG was superior and that their players were. So Jason O says Rutgers has 3 commits from Georgia. Well, Jason, I didn't know that, and that's very encouraging. I hope one of them or 2 of them are wide receivers. But the fact that Rutgers, okay, so that's encouraging that they're doing that because they need depth. And Schiano keeps saying in his press conference that the foundation is there. Well, okay, the foundation is there. Let's see results. Because 4 straight losses against teams that really is Nebraska that good? Is Wisconsin that good? Is UCLA that good? No. So I guess I'll end the show by saying, when I look at USC, I see a team that is going to return to national championship caliber status. I fear that Rutgers is going in the opposite direction. And that's not good for Rutgers University. It's not good for college football. I think it's about time that, my feeling is that this is Greg Schiano's last rodeo. That after Rutgers, he will retire. And I think this is the perfect time for Rutgers in an era where parity is possible, in the NIL portal era, for Rutgers to give it the old college try and go for it. If they don't, I don't think Rutgers will ever have the kind of program that at least some people like myself who are New Jersey natives and who love the Garden State hope it will become. So if you guys enjoyed the show, please hit the like and subscribe button if you'd like. We are going to be having a live show every Monday going forward at 7 p.m. Every Monday at 7 p.m. where we're happy to take your calls and comments and have discussions not only about Rutgers but about the Big Ten and about college football generally. So next show will be on Monday at 7 p.m. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for your comments. Thanks for being here, and hope to see you in a few days. Take care.